Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Archblood, Bowles, Bostman, Brandt, Brewer, Bracy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Urban, Friesen, Geis, Grager, Groney, Halloran, Matt Hansen, Hilders, Hickman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colterman, LeGrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfell, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shears, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, Senators Williams and Ben Hansen. 47 ayes, no nays, one present not voting, one excused not voting, Mr. President.
LB 221 passes. Final bill, LB 436E. Mr. Clerk.
436% Matt Hansen, Bill for Government to create complete count committee of private parties in the Nebraska state data, legislature, state data, so these order Nebraska official complete count committee is behalf of the state of Nebraska program and solicit and spend private funds carry the bridge the second term is January 2021. Section 2, Sense of Emergency exists. This act takes effect when passed and approved according to law.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 436E pass with the emergency clause attached? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Archblood, Bowles, Brandt, Bracy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Friesen, Geis, Grager, Groney, Matt Hansen, Hilders, Hickman, Howard, Hunt, Kolowski, Colterman, LeGrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Colliston, McDonald, Morfell, Moser, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shears, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting no, Senators Boston, McClements, Erdman, Lowe. Not voting, Senators Albright, Brewer, Halloran, Hughes, Linehan, Merman, and Ben Hansen. 38 ayes, 4 nays, 6 present not voting, 1 excused not voting.
LB 436E passes with the emergency clause attached. While the legislature is in session and capable of transacting business, I propose to sign and do hereby sign the following 3 bills. Number 26, number 221, and number 436E. Senator Wayne has some very special guests visiting with us today. We have with us the senator's wife, Katie, his daughter, Maya, and his son, Thomas, all with us on the north balcony. Could the Wayne family please rise so we can welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature? Proceeding on the agenda, 2 motions to override. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Wayne would move that Legislative Bill 492 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor.
Senator Wayne, you recognized to open on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. My legal counsel, Trevor, wrote a great introduction. And sometimes when I vary right now, you'll see Trevor sweating. But the reality is some of you know how I got here today, and some of you don't know, and I think I should share with you how I got here. My mom was 33, my dad was 18. My mom and dad got ran out of Coffeyville, Kansas, and my mom spent 6 months at a halfway house on 24th and Pratt, the Salvation Army that Senator Chambers is familiar with. She stayed there for 6 months to have me and gave me up for adoption. I went to the Nebraska Children's Home, in which my adopted parents, who I call mom and dad, wanted actually a biracial girl, and was called and said, well, we have a biracial boy. Come down and we'll talk. So they saw me and went back and had a conversation, and my older brother was running around at the little daycare inside of Nebraska Children's Home. And then he kind of got loose, like we all do when we're 3, and they were calling for him, and they went back, and he was standing next to my crib. What those adopted parents allow me to do is grow up to have sometimes the worst of both worlds, but oftentimes the best of both worlds. The best of both worlds because my entire life I have lived the urban and rural divide. My entire life I spent between Omaha and a little bitty farm outside of Roth, Iowa. And last week, my aunt posted a picture of the farm that my grandparents used to own and how destructive it looks and how embarrassing it looks because, like many of the ag farmers today, they had to make a decision to leave the family farm and go back to Roth, Iowa. I say that to say many of the senators I've talked to in rural Nebraska know that I get where they're coming from. I get where they're coming from because I lived it through the 80s and 90s when consolidation and other unknown forces caused my family to leave the family farm. So I understand what it means to detassel, and I don't mean like today where they run a machine over. I mean actually walk out there with long sleeves on and detassel. But I also understand what it means to play curveball in the middle of urban Omaha. I know what it means to walk the beans, not like they do today riding, but actually walk. But I also know what it means to have a family cookout in the middle of a park in Omaha, Nebraska that is on the other side of my family. I say that today to say what this bill is about is not about an urban and rural divide. And when we have big ideas, whether it's Senator Breezy, Senator Linehan, big ideas on how to solve things, there's gonna be a little bit of pain and there's gonna be a little bit of cost. But that's how we move Nebraska forward. That's how we move this state forward. So I, for 2 years, have played this role of urban and rural divide senator and trying to figure it out. This year, with the blessing of many of you who voted in support of my bills, I'm almost out of what I think what I can do for North Omaha. So for 2 years, I've dedicated to building something and changing my community. And I've already started sharing with people exemptions that I'm willing to close, because next year I'm gonna attack TIOSA the same way I attacked TIF, the same way I attacked North Omaha issues this year. We can get to that solution that you are trying to get to, but we have to get out of this idea that one solution fits all Nebraska. And that's what the governor's letter says, that property taxes will be raised, and that's just not true. Since 1970, Omaha Transits have been on our statute, and we have not necessarily updated them except for twice in the 80s and once in 2003, but no significant changes. We haven't had any significant changes because we have not thought big of how to move Omaha and this state forward. But we had multiple interim studies since 2002, but nobody stood up and said, let's do it. Well, we are at a point where we have to do it. My rural senators, you are at a point where you have to do something too. And it's gonna take a governor override, just like I'm standing here today next year for you to get your property tax relief. We all know that. And in order for Omaha to move forward, we need this. And I wanna just put it in this perspective, and then I'm gonna go back to the script Trevor wrote before I get in more trouble. Public transit is the lifeline of every community. You look at the cities that are growing right now, it's along the I-80 corridor, or Omaha, except for Senator Mosier, Columbus. But if you look at what's going through Columbus, is a major highway that is well kept. There is a ability to increase municipalities along these public highways and interstates because public transit matters to economic growth. But then once you hit a certain size, it's no longer about moving goods, but you have to be able to move people. You have to be able to move people around in order for the rest of that city to grow. And that's where we're at in Omaha, Nebraska. The purpose of LB 492 correctly stated that it is about growing Omaha. We have unworkable statutes right now that allow outside cities or surrounding cities to partner with Metro Transit. Many of you just saw I handed out the recent editorial from the Omaha World Herald. It's critical of the importance of regional transit, and as I stated first, to provide access to employment and educational opportunities for low-income residents who can't afford a car. Second, to remain competitive with the metropolitan areas in the Midwest in recruiting and retaining young talent that places a premium on transit. And third, to enhance prospects for the continued growth of Omaha's urban core. Why is that real? Because I had a meeting yesterday at 8 o'clock in the morning with a light manufacturer, We were sitting in the hotel lobby before I came down here. They were looking at 3 sites that were 10 acres. All the sites were outside of the core of Omaha. And they told me, and they were actually asking about this bill, they told me they are now looking at other cities because they can't move people to the 300 jobs that they want to move people to. Currently, we have construction going on at some of the biggest data centers that have over 100 vacancies in South Sarpy that we can't move people there because we don't have the proper transit. Now let me address the governor's veto. First, claiming that LB 492 would be a tax increase above the city and county's levy flies in the face of political reality. If Metro Transit becomes a regional authority, their levy is no longer within the city and county's authority. It is a virtual guarantee, and if you think about these political times, that Mayor Stothard and the county board will reduce their levy by 2.5% by both, so they can say they lowered property taxes. If not, they will be held accountable at the next election. Second, there is almost no way, and I'm kind of smiling when I read this, LB 492 will affect taxes on agricultural land. The whole bill is around municipalities. Right now, agricultural land is being taxed by Douglas County to provide 2.5 cents to MAT, Metro Area Transit. My bill removes that and says it only applies to municipalities. So the ag land valuation that was quoted in his letter is completely inaccurate. It's inaccurate because there's no ag land except for a couple farms that I know about inside the city limits. And finally, if LB 492 does not, and I repeat, does not create a new political subdivision, it currently exists. We are creating an elected board to hold them accountable to the levying authority that we are giving them that they actually already has. We're just moving it to a different location. It is time to move Omaha forward. It is time to move this state forward. I need not only this support, my community needs this support, Omaha needs this support, and yes, South Sarpy needs this support. All the city mayors were in favor of this. The Omaha Chamber is in favor of this. This is an economic development tool that we need, that our community need, and I would appreciate a green vote on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Wayne. Debate is now open on Senator Wayne's motion to override. Senator Groney.
Excuse me, I thought there'd be a long list. I gave a speech earlier last week about I'm from now on going to debate bills and not senators. Senator Wayne and I are friends. This is a tax increase. This is creating another elected board. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. The city of Omaha is up against their levy limit. They want the 5.5 cents to spend on other things in their levy limit, and they want to create another 10-cent tax ability so that they can shift their tax burden to the people of Omaha and Douglas County and to other cities if they sign up. Taxpayers are not for this. The ones I know in the region of Douglas County, I've asked them about it, and they said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Did you know there's a bill in the legislature that might raise your property taxes on your house by $200? What? I represent citizens. I don't represent government entities. I represent the citizens of the state of Nebraska. This has nothing to do with rural and urban. There's going to be a bill next year on 3 cents for NRDs. Are we going to have a bunch of urban senators say, "Oh, we'll vote for that. That's just Western Nebraska"? Poor little Western Nebraska. I don't vote for property tax increases, period. I'd be a hypocrite to do so. As many times as I stood up here and said that property taxes are a problem, me and Senator Wayne had a conversation. I'm all for looking at the transit problem, public transit problem in Omaha. There's a problem. The problem is, what are they doing with the money they're getting now? I go to Denver, I go to other towns, and there are buses I'm passing all the time in traffic. I don't see them in Omaha. What are they doing with the money now? Is it being wasted? Let's do an LR on it. Let's find out what cities are doing a good job and then try to mirror that. But to just create another elected board that when people go to You've done it, folks. How many times you go on the ballot and seen somebody on the ballot for an ESU or educational service unit? Or we've got so many taxing entities and so few people that want to step up to run for these entities now. You have no idea who you're voting for. You don't have any idea what they stand for, because we have too many elected boards in this state. Too many. This is a tax increase. This thing flew through without a lot of discussion, a lot of debate. This is a huge, huge increase in government in the state of Nebraska. You are going to raise taxes on people in Douglas County and maybe other communities. The system works now. They could create an interlocal agreement with these other towns, Bellevue, Gretna, Fremont. They could do it. They would get outside their spending limit, their 3.5% spending limit, but they would be within their levy limits yet. Let's start there. Let's start there. To claim Omaha and Lincoln and Douglas County isn't growing, or Sarpent County isn't growing because we don't have public transit is nonsense. They are growing, and they are growing rapidly right now. Public transit won't change that. They already have, let's start from square one. They already have public transit in Omaha. They have it. Is it inept? Well, then maybe you need to elect a different mayor or a different city council in Omaha, because they're not doing a good job with the funding they have for public transit. But to throw more money at it
1 minute.
is not the answer at all. Let's take a step back here and let's look at this issue again, and let's start in a little bit different increment. To claim you're going to be for property tax relief in rural Nebraska, but stick the person in Douglas County with a $200 tax increase, and it is a tax increase, otherwise we wouldn't be asking for this. They're not going to lower Omaha's taxes 5.5 cents and do the transit 5.5 cents. They will keep the 5.5 cents in Omaha for other purposes, and they will raise your taxes. And those people won't even know what hit them. They will never use the public bus, most of them, in the suburbs. And they will pay for this, because they weren't involved in the conversation. And at one editorial, and all of a sudden it hit the floor, and it went flying through. Senator Wayne is a very, very good senator, very honest individual, but that isn't why you vote for bills. You look at the bill.
That's time, Senator.
Is it good for Nebraska? No.
Thanks, Senator Groney. Senator Chambers.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, when this bill first came up, I was not even on the floor, but I watched and I listened down in my office. And it gives you an advantage because there's a zeroing in on who is speaking, and you have the opportunity to take notes if you want to, whatever it takes to help you concentrate on what you're looking at. The arguments that were given, I felt were cogent, they were reasonable, and this bill does address an existing situation that is not going to be solved by the current way public transportation is operating. I was persuaded by the arguments that I heard. I voted in support of the bill. The governor, having expressed a contrary opinion, and that's all that it is, and it's not even accurate, is not enough to overcome all of the reasoning that was presented during debate. There are animals who eat vegetation, and they will chew it for a while and they get tired, but having done half the work, they don't want to give that up and have to start all over again, so they swallow it. They have more than one stomach. Then when it occurs to them that either they need to ruminate or cogitate or regurgitate, they can bring it back up. And although to a human being, something that had been in the middle regions of the body, not the nether regions, but the middle regions, to come back up, slippery, slimy, half chewed, maybe half digested, would not be appetizing. but we are not constructed by Mother Nature to function in that fashion, but those animals which do function in that fashion live by the rules according to which they exist. So there are those who bring up property tax every time any issue comes up because they look for the conditioned response. You've heard what they said about Pavlov. You cause a living creature to associate one thing with something else. In this case, a certain sound would lead to a certain reaction in certain animals because whenever that sound occurred, a certain action took place. So that is known as a conditioned response. It is a response, but it is conditioned. It is not conscious. It is not something that has to be thought about. One thing triggers the other. Property tax is a slogan. Not every issue before us can be resolved by a simple appeal to property tax. It's like Pavlov ringing the bell. Those who voted for this bill in the first instance did not vote for it because Senator Wayne is a nice person, because Senator Wayne is honest. That is not why people vote for bills. If that were why people voted for bills, I wouldn't have so many that can't even get out of committee, which once out of committee cannot be passed, which if passed will be vetoed by the governor. Who can deny that I am an honest person, that I am a good person, that I am a likable person, and all the other things? But to be completely frank, I haven't seen anything in the governor's objection to this bill that would change my mind, and I don't think it should change the mind of those who voted for the bill in the first instance. So I will vote to override the governor's veto. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Chambers. Senator LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to the motion to override the governor's veto. As I've consistently said on this bill, I completely agree with Senator Wayne on the problem. We do have a workforce problem in Sarpy County. Where I disagree is that we need to create a new government board and provide more taxing authority in order to deal with that problem. Now, Senator Wayne laid out that he doesn't think that this would be a tax increase because the affected municipalities would lower their levies because they would take this outside their levy limit. I can't think of another instance where we generally see that happen. Usually when you move taxing authority outside of a governing entity's levy authority, what you see is that they retain the same levy they previously had and take the extra money. And if they don't, they decrease it to a point where they still get more money than they previously had. So overall, that is a tax increase. And second, I think the notion that this bill creates an option for municipalities to join it is a false notion. There are some municipalities that currently contract with the existing authority to provide bus service in Sarpy County. Those existing services would be lost if those municipalities did not join this new entity and raise taxes on their constituents. So the notion that this is optional is really a false choice. It's a setup between a choice of raising taxes or losing existing services. That is not really a choice. This is a property tax increase, primarily on Sarpy County, to pay for services primarily in Douglas County, and that's why I've consistently referred to this bill as the learning community of transit. I stand still strongly opposed to the bill, and I would urge you to reject the motion to override the governor's veto. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator LeGrand. Senator Vargas.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator Wayne and I have worked for some time now. I think I might know him the longest in this body. I think everybody has had some experience working with Senator Wayne, and I think we can say he works with integrity and he is doing everything he can to then fight for North Omaha. He says that. And that's right. The reason why I support the veto override is because when he talks about North Omaha, he's not just talking about North Omaha. I don't often get up and talk about the economic conditions of what is going to impact my district. I think we try to focus on broad solutions. But at the end of the day, when specific parts of our communities are struggling, we engage in debate to try to find solutions. So what I want to say is this is a solution to a problem. In a second, I'll be sending out reports by legislative district so you can look at some quick facts. As part of some of the research from the Legislative Planning Committee, we do, the University of Nebraska helps us to collaborate with the Nebraska State Data Center, data reports to show which each district. I know we know about our district. I encourage you to look at Senator Wayne's District 13. Look at District 7. I'm going to talk about my district very, very quickly. But my district has a labor force participation of only about 65%. About 58.2% kids less than 6, their parents are not in the labor force. I need people in my community to get back to work and have opportunities. And if you don't think regional transit and public transit helps aid with that, then I implore you to come down to my district. Come down to Senator Wayne's district. That's what this is about. If you think that there is an isolated, that this is not a solution to a problem, this is a solution to a very, very clear problem. We have years of research that support that public transit will help with economic development and will help reduce this labor workforce shortage that we're seeing. And so I stand in support of this because the pragmatic side in me says, I hope we don't view this simply as either a tax increase or a tax decrease or whatever, but instead try to figure out a pathway and say, is this trying to target and is going to have a return on investment? And that return on investment will overshadow whatever you consider to be a tax shift, increase, or decrease. And it's very clear this is going to have a positive economic impact on not only North Omaha, but will have a positive impact on South Omaha. So I ask you to stand in support of the motion veto override, and I yield the remainder of my time to Senator Wayne.
Thanks, Senator Vargas. Senator Wayne, minute 50.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Vargas. I just want to respond quickly to Senator LaGrone's comment regarding Sarpy and the communities that MAC currently serves will not lose their contracts. Actually, Section 5, we added, thank you, we added specific language for them to retain the ability to contract. And again, everybody is assuming that tomorrow, if this bill passes, Matt is going to opt to create an elective board, and that South Sarpy, any of the communities, whether it's Papillion, La Vista, or whoever, is going to automatically jump in and say, we're going to be a part of it. We are creating a framework in which these communities, these municipalities, can work together to form a regional transit. It doesn't happen overnight. There are many, many steps that have to occur that is laid out in the bill before anything happens. The problem is we have statutes from the 1970s that are unworkable for them to have that framework to put together a regional transit. No different than our tax code. The issue we struggle with that I've been reading for the last week and a half is we have a 1970 tax system when it was basically products, goods, and now we're trying to figure out how to deal with services. That is a struggle, and it's going to be a fundamental shift that we have to undertake, which will require a lot of work. And for the last 15 years, Urban Affairs has looked at this issue in multiple studies and said, this is the way we need to go forward. And we sat down with the city of Omaha, we sat down with the chamber, we sat down with businesses and the communities in South Sarpy, and all of their elected officials and all their major employers are saying, yes, this is an issue. Senator LaGrone agreed, this is an issue. He just doesn't like the solution.
It's time, Senator. Thanks, Senator Wayne. Senator Breezy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise in opposition to the motion to override the veto. I struggled with this one some. Senator Wayne worked hard on this, and I agree with what he's trying to do here and the importance of what he's trying to do. But with that said, for me, it goes back to property taxes. Some of you may think otherwise, but when myself, coming from rural Nebraska, and some of my other rural colleagues stand up here and talk about property taxes, it's not just an ag issue for us. We recognize that Nebraska homeowners, according to the Tax Foundation, have the 6th to 7th highest property taxes in the nation, and according to taxrate.org, they have the 4th highest property taxes in the nation. So what it boils down to, whether you're a Cherry County rancher or a Douglas County homeowner, we rely far too heavily on you to fund local government with property taxes. It's too easy to shove the burden of funding local government onto the backs of our property taxpayers. And that's true whether you're talking about unfunded mandates from the state, like SPED funding or K-12 funding in general, or whether you're talking about creating a local entity with such taxing authority. Our unreasonable reliance on property taxes to fund local government has to stop. Find me a different funding solution for what we're trying to do here, and I'm all in. But giving a new entity additional property taxing authority runs counter to what needs to be done here, and that's reducing our reliance on property taxes. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Breezy. Senator Stinner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the legislature, I thought I'd weigh in on this subject since I live 455 miles away from Omaha. I do support this motion. I have supported the underlying legislation because I think when you look at Omaha, the greater Omaha area, and you understand it, even when you go across the state of Nebraska, if you go to my region, there is a resume there for our community. There's a resume in the Kearney area. There's a resume in the Grand Island area. And that resume really has to do with attracting and retaining businesses. We have a situation now in Omaha, I'm going to call it Greater Omaha, forget Omaha. We have to think broader. It's a regional power today. It's moving to a national and international power. And this transit situation isn't just about moving people around. And it's certainly important to have that on your resume and be able to move people around, but it's a structure that you have to have in place. It does take money to put this infrastructure in place. It does take money to do that. And of course, we always use the extreme case that it's going to be $17 million on the property tax payer to pay for all of these improvements. It doesn't happen right away. They have the option not to be involved in it. So let's get off of that over-the-top type of analysis. Let's get back to what Omaha is today, what it can be as a greater Omaha area. And the idea of mass transit is obviously to cut down on pollution. I mean, you go to Denver, that's the big compelling factor of moving people around, pollution and traffic congestion. So this actually needs to be put in place for those two components to be balanced. Parking's extremely expensive. Parking's expensive to build. If you want to move people around, you want people to be in their cars and park, it's an expensive proposition. So this obviously cuts down on that as well. Omaha needs the appropriate structure of greater Omaha. Now, if suburbs decide that they don't want to be involved in it, fine, they don't have to contribute. If they do want to be involved in it and they have a unique idea of how they can generate those dollars, that's fine. But if Omahas go from kind of a minor league team to a major league team, they have to have mass transit, therefore they have to have this structure, therefore I support this. You know, the idea that property tax can be thrown out there and basically used as a tool to defeat any kind of sensible legislation, I find to be tragic. Tragic on us. Because this is what's needed. The 3-cent levy for NRDs is needed. Do they use it all the time? No. Has it a proven history of being successful? Yes. Do we need to have big flood control projects? Do we need to have irrigation projects, water restored back to the river, conservation activities? It all takes a lot of money. And the mechanism for doing that is a levy. It's for the common good. This is for the common good of Greater Omaha. This is building a state. This is growing business. This is attracting and retaining businesses. Yes, and it's 455 miles away from me. But I also understand that I am a state senator, along with being somebody from western Nebraska. You know, it's kind of interesting, if you look at LB 289, property tax relief, what do? You gave Omaha 6 cents. 6 cents levy authority for their schools. I guess we use property tax when we need it. We just can't throw property tax out as that mechanism to defeat everything. We have to start to weigh the good and the bad. And property tax is a vehicle. It's a tool. And I, as a senator, want to give the tools to the local people who are asking for it. The Chamber's asked for it. Omaha has asked for it. And I think it's an absolute critical ingredient for them to have the appropriate structure to grow their city in greater Omaha. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Stinner. Speaker Scheer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of LB 492. I voted for it to begin with. It's a good bill. If we expect to try to get the population in our greatest populated area to be able to increase their income, move to better and higher paying jobs, it's imperative that they have a transportation mode that will get them to those jobs from where they live. This is a permissive bill. It does not make anyone raise any of their taxes. It provides those local entities the ability to join if they wish to, and it allows their governing board to make that decision if they want to join. This is not something we're doing to anyone or any community. Those leaders in those areas have the opportunity to participate or not. This isn't anything that is required of anyone. We are giving those that want to help their communities, their constituents, the opportunity to make a move on the economic scale, allowing them to go to where higher paying, better benefited jobs exist. It's that simple. I find it a little disingenuous when Senator Groney gets up and tells me that he never will talk or never support property tax increases. 289 had exactly that in it. Senator Groney voted to bring that bill out of committee with a 6 cents levy for OPS to utilize to help them out of their retirement program's problems in funding. So if we're going to get up and talk, let's talk about what is important, what we truly believe in, not what is convenient for the day. We all need to start being a little more consistent. If we believe property tax is bad, fine. But this doesn't impose property tax. This gives local entities, local governing bodies, the decision if indeed they want to participate. That's simple. As we move forward, and if we want the state to move forward, if we want to quit worrying about having to worry about if we have enough money to cover our checks or we've got things to improve the lives of our constituents, the citizens of the state of Nebraska, people have to make more money. The only way we get more dollars is if people have more money, because when they get more money, they pay more income tax, they have more disposable income, and they pay more sales tax. It's no secret. This is not rocket science. This is as much an economic development bill as any. We have to help people move to those locations that are having better funded positions so that they can have more dollars to help their families move themselves up in this world. This is a helping hand up. This isn't a handout. This isn't forced. But we need to be respectful of the fact that there are people in this world. I come from a rural area. We have no mass transit. If people are going to get to the job, they have to buy. Thank you, Mr. President. they have to at least get a ride with a friend, or they have to do something else, or perhaps even ride a bike. But it's only 3 miles across Norfolk. It's pretty easy to get across. You could probably walk. That's not true in the Omaha area. If we want Omaha to grow, if we want Nebraska to grow, then this is an extremely important part of that growth. But let's call it what it is. It's not a tax increase. We're allowing local entities to determine if they want to participate. And we're helping people up to a better life, a better lifestyle. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Friesen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of LB 492 and the motion to override. I've had the opportunity to travel a lot, being with the Corn Board, and when you travel to any large metropolitan city, they have a much better public transit system than Omaha does. In the past, I've always said what's good for Omaha is good for Nebraska, and kind of sometimes what's good for rural Nebraska is going to be good for Omaha. This is a two-way street. I did not promise anyone here that I would come to cut taxes or raise taxes or not raise taxes. I've always come here to do whatever I thought was best for the state. And I will support this because I think this is something that probably Omaha needs. If you want Omaha to grow, I mean, people do need public transit. Other cities you've traveled to, parking is terrible, the traffic is terrible, and if you want to alleviate some of that and get a head start on it, now's the time to start working on some other mode of transportation. Younger people do use public transit more. They depend on it. So this is one of those things that I think that's, it's not an urban-rural thing, it's what's good for Nebraska. With that, I'd yield the rest of my time to Senator Wayne.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Senator Wayne, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. He waves that off. Senator Walls.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of LB 492. I think this is crazy. The fact that we are debating this bill to provide transportation to people to work and participate in their communities, to do a job. You know, in Fremont, we would welcome this because we have an opportunity with Costco, but we need employees. We have to have transportation. And then to use this bill as a property tax excuse, or not supporting this because of a property tax excuse, is crazy. I've reflected on this year quite a bit. I thought about the many bills brought to our committees, bills that would provide quality services to people, bills that would fund special education and provide property tax, bills that would increase provider rates to nursing homes, allowing them to stay viable so people can continue to work, bills that would promote education, health care, bills that would provide incentives to farmers, increase broadband in rural areas, bills that would support family and children who need a hand up. So many bills stuck in committee that would improve the quality of life for people who live in Nebraska, that would allow Nebraskans to work and to buy property. We have got to start looking at the whole picture, and I talked with Senator Breezy about this yesterday. When we talk about our ability to reduce property taxes, we have to look at the whole picture. We have to look at keeping our nursing facilities open, our schools viable, our infrastructure strong. We need to move forward to keep people working in Nebraska, to keep kids educated in Nebraska, and to keep people living in Nebraska. I hope that we have learned a lesson this year about winning. Because this year, nobody won. You can't win when you just want to do your own thing. You don't win when you don't open your minds to other people's ideas. We've got to look at the whole picture to move Nebraska forward, and that means supporting agriculture, that means supporting transportation, education, healthcare, industry, and business as a team of legislators. Someone who sits in front of me, and he's not here right now, but doesn't want to be mentioned, said it very well this morning. He said, you know what? We should be working together to move good legislation forward and support each other instead of looking at just a tax problem again. We need to look at the whole picture and how we can provide more jobs and more opportunities for more people. So let's stop focusing on the negative. Let's stop saying, well, you know what, there's something everybody will hate in this bill. And let's start thinking about some positive things, looking outside the box and moving our state forward. Again, I am in full support of moving Nebraska forward, of providing more jobs and providing people the opportunity to buy more homes in Nebraska. I support LB 492. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Walz. Senator Groney.
Thank you. Let's start by clearing up fallacy that growth of a city, growth of a state leads to lower property taxes. Absolutely false. The biggest lie out there. You look at the highest property taxes, Omaha, Bellevue, Gretna. They're growing communities, property taxes go up, hit the lid. It's called mismanagement. You got more taxpayers, more property, and what did the cities do? They come for us for more tax power. Senator Walz, the taxpayers of this state pay highest taxes in the nation, one of the highest. They support public education. They support higher education. They support public transit. Because our elected officials are incompetent and our administrators that can't use the money correctly and wisely is not the taxpayers' fault. We are a high-tax state. You are a hypocrite if you say you believe in property tax relief and then vote for property tax increases. You cannot do that. I am not a hypocrite. I will sleep good tonight no matter what happens here. But it's a fallacy to claim that growth leads to lower taxes. It does not. Let me address LB 289. In 289, the people of Omaha will get a 20% reduction in their property taxes for their schools, a 20%. 10% lower of the levy authority, 10% lower of their property tax valuations. And they are given an option of a 6% increase, 20-cent reduction, 6-cent option to bail them out of a mess that they're in on a retirement plan. So don't tell me. You accept an amendment, bring this back next year. I cut the levy limits for local entities by 10 cents in exchange for 10 cents. I'll go 1 for 1 of a new entity for transit. I'll vote for that. But Senator Scheer and Stenner, read the whole bill, 289. It is an overall property tax increase for the citizens of Omaha and reaches out a hand of help from the rest of the state on a major problem they have with their retirement plan. That is the truth. Where's the city council members of North Omaha, Senator Vargas's and Senator Wayne's area? Where are they? Where's the $18 million being spent now that they tax people of Douglas County? That's Omaha. I don't know, when you throw in whatever Douglas County is taxing too for transit. Where's the money being spent? You would think they'd focus in the area where there isn't a lot of private ownership of vehicles, where those folks need jobs to get to their destinations. You think buses would be running into each other in North Omaha if city government was functional in Omaha. That's not my fault. That's not the fault of all the citizens of Douglas County and Omaha and those other communities who have their vehicles, pay their taxes on their vehicles, pay the gas taxes, drive their own car to work. Let's make Omaha fix their problem and show us some changes in their management, because what I'm hearing here, it's a complete disaster. People are locked in their homes, can't get to work. And they're spending millions of dollars, folks. False promises. The government is full of false promises. You just raise taxes and you'll be happy, and promises of joy and a job. Well, we've had a lot of false promises in this state because we have some of the highest taxes in the nation. And this will add to that. Talking about working together? 4-4 votes, Senator Walls.
1 minute.
And you would have had 3 more of your bills out on the floor. Let's work together. I'll have an exec this afternoon. Anyway, I work with people, and I'm working for all the taxpayers of the state of Nebraska. I want to protect children in their classrooms. I want to cut the costs in our schools because we do have less violence in it. I'm looking for efficiencies in government, not more spending in government. We're looking for the same ends, the same place we want to be. But we need the government in this state to be leaner, meaner, and more efficient. I don't see the bills coming out for that. I see let's throw more money at it. This is a let's throw money at it bill. That's what this is. I admire Senator Wayne's passion for this. His goals are wise and good. The answer is wrong. Throwing money to the same people who have messed up the transit authority now is wrong, wrong, wrong.
That's time. Thanks, Senator Groney. Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good morning. As I listened to the discussion this morning, I was amused by Speaker Scheer's comments. I want to speak to those just for a moment. He said that people need to make more money, so they make more money, they pay more taxes. Is that the reason we want people to make more money, so they pay more taxes? I think not. I think the reason we should want people to make more money so they can keep more of what they have, their own money. For you see, this may come as a shock to some of you. No government has ever given you anything that they didn't first take from somebody else. And so if we want to grow the state to get more people so they can pay more taxes, so the government can spend more, that's the wrong reason to grow the state. We need to take care of the 1.9 million people we got. Raising the wage level so people make more money to collect more taxes is the wrong direction. We have continued to spend more year after year after year. If you manage your personal budget like that, you go bankrupt. But we, the state, continue to do that. 2.9% increase in spending this year. Every year I've been here, except when we're forced not to because the revenue's down. So we need to think about why we're asking people to come here, why we're asking them or trying to get them to make more money so they can pay more taxes. That's an amazing concept. That doesn't fit into my vocabulary. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Erdman. Senator Wayne, you recognize to close any motion.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to first thank my colleagues who were in the queue and turned off their lights. I know they wanted to respond to some things on the mic, and I really do appreciate allowing this vote to go forward at this time. The reason I told you about the story of me being adopted and how I got here today is because one of my colleagues last night called me a Renaissance man. And for almost 30 plus years, you struggle with the urban and rural divide in your life. You struggle with the black and white, the farm versus city. And it validated that struggle to be real. Because I didn't introduce a hemp bill for farmers this year for any other reason than I understand that there's a need for an alternative crop. I didn't work on bills that affect rural Nebraska for any other reason than I go back to the family farm that my parents or grandparents owned. We are here because we all have our life experiences. And it's very easy to say no. It's very easy to push a red light and say property taxes, sales tax, or whatever other issue versus sitting down and working through the problem. Everyone in here has identified the problem. Even the people who will vote red today will admit there is a fundamental problem as it relates to moving people around Omaha, Nebraska. Everybody will admit that this is a part of economic growth, that there are companies leaving Omaha area because they cannot fill jobs because we don't run bus lines. I can take you through my district on McKinley and show you people walking up and down because the closest bus route is a mile and a half away from their job, but they still want to work. And people say, well, why is this needed? Let me put this in perspective. Right now, the taxing ask, the request, generates about $30 million. Omaha Public Schools spend $36 million on moving kids around. And if you say, well, that's their choice, well, let me tell you, half of that budget, 20 million of that is special education. That isn't their choice. They have to provide that service. And we're talking about moving the entire city, having a place where you get off an airport that we look like we are an urban city, that you can catch the bus to your hotel. We don't have that on a consistent basis. We passed out the article on the second round where somebody gave up their car for Lent. It took him 4 hours to get to Bellevue. He had to run 7 miles to catch the next bus to be dropped off a mile and a half from his home at 12 o'clock at night. This is the reality of the busing system in Omaha. There is a reason the chamber, the businesses, and constituents, the taxpayers, are willing to pay because they need this service. They need this service. So I am grateful to be labeled as a Renaissance man, but I have to thank my birth mother and my adopted parents for giving me the experience to understand what that really means.
1 minute.
And it's about being able to recognize what community you represent and what they need, and building the bridge to somebody who doesn't live in your community, who looks like you or acts like you, and making sure they understand what that need is. That's what we do in this body. That's what we're about, and that's what this vote is about. This is about giving a tool to Omaha so they can grow and be more efficient with the population they have inside of Omaha. And if those outside of Omaha want to join in and make a regional, they can. If they choose not to, they don't have to. But this has been studied for 10 years, and it's time to take some action on it. And this is one step in moving this state forward and moving Omaha forward. So I would appreciate a green vote to override the governor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Wayne. Members,
House roll call vote in reverse order.
It's been a request to place House on a call. The question is, shall the House go on a call? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
29 ayes, 5 nays to place the House under call.
House on a call. All members, please return to your desk and check in. The House is on a call. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senator Howland, check in. All 49 members are now present. Members, you've heard the debate on the override motion. This motion requires 30 votes. The question is, shall LB 492 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor? Roll call vote's been requested. Reverse order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Wishart. Voting yes, Sir Williams. Voting yes, Sir Wayne. Voting yes, Sir Walls. Voting yes, Sir Vargas. Voting yes, Sir Stinner. Voting yes, Sir Slama. Voting no, Sir Shear. Voting yes, Sir Quick. Voting yes, Sir Pansy Brooks. Voting yes, Sir Merman. Voting no, Sir Moser. Voting yes, Sir Morfeld. Voting yes, Sir McDonald. Voting yes, Sir McAllister. Voting yes, Sir Lowe. Voting no, Sir Linehan. Voting yes, Sir Lindstrom. Voting yes, Sir Lathrop. Voting yes, Sir Legrone. Voting no, Sir Coulterman. Voting yes, Sir Kalowski. Voting yes, Sir Hunt. Voting yes, Sir Hughes. Voting yes, Sir Howard. Voting yes, Sir Hickelman. Voting yes, Sir Hilders. Voting no, Sir Matt Hansen. Voting yes, Sir Ben Hansen. Voting no, Sir Holleran. Voting no, Sir Groney. Voting no, Sir Gregert. Voting yes, Sir Geist. Voting no, Sir Friesen. Voting yes, Sir Erdman. Voting no, Sir Dorn. Voting yes, Sir DeBoer. Voting yes, Sir Crawford. Voting yes, Sir Clements. Voting no, Sir Chambers. Voting yes, Sir Kavanaugh. Voting yes, Sir Breesy. Voting no, Sir Brewer. Voting no, Sir Brandt. Voting yes, Sir Bostelman. Voting no, Sir Bowles. Voting yes, Sir Blood. Sir Blood, I'm sorry. Thank you. Voting yes. Sir Arch. Voting no, Sir Albright. Voting no. 33 A's, 16 A's, Mr. President, on the motion that Legislative Bill 492 become law.
Motion is adopted while the legislature is in session and capable of transacting business. I propose to sign and do hereby sign the certificate that reads LB 492, having been returned by the governor with his objection thereto, and after reconsideration having passed the legislature by the constitutional majority, has become law this 31st day of May, 2019. Next motion, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Kavanaugh would move that Legislative Bill 533 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor.
Senator Kavanaugh, you're recognized to open your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Good morning, colleagues. LB 533 updates state statutes to be consistent with federal law regarding marriage and updating marriage certificates to match. This bill had a public hearing on February 21st. It was voted out of committee unanimously and placed on general file on April 10th. It passed 3 rounds of votes on the floor and was sent to the governor a week ago with 33 votes. It harmonizes paperwork. It's a paperwork bill. It's very sexy. At no time in this process did anyone speak to me about concerns or amendments to be made. There was no opposition to this bill in committee. There was no letters submitted in opposition to this bill. PRO never contacted me with any concerns whatsoever about this piece of legislation. These are legal documents, and that's something that we can easily fix. We've actually already done it this session with Senator Howard's bill, LB 111. On March 11th, the governor signed that bill. It changed title application forms and removed husband and wife from them. It received 38 votes in this body. So I'm not doing anything new, not reinventing any wheels, just harmonizing paperwork. Why is this bill necessary? The fundamental right to marry is now the land of the law, but some Nebraska statutes retain dated gender-specific language, such as husband and wife. That now needs updating to the legally correct term spouse instead. Many Nebraskans have waited long enough to have their love and commitment fully recognized. This bill is an appropriate cleanup mechanism to modernize state law and bring it into compliance with the legal rights of married same-sex couples. The legislature should override the veto and enact this bill to ensure our great state has clarity and uniformity to ease certainty in application of the law for our residents. There already is discrepancy from county to county as far as how applications for marriage licenses are worded. For instance, Lancaster County, the county we're currently in, already issues marriage licenses that are worded consistent with the bill's terminology. But other counties are different. There should be uniformity across the state. But more basically, terms and statutes and administrative regulations ought to be accurately reflected in the law. Same-sex marriage is legal and recognized by all states. The administrative procedures that exist for the application and issuance of marriage license ought to be accurately described the parties in the marriage. Among other things, marriage is a legal institution, and people who are married are entitled to certain rights and responsibilities. Under the law, and the legal documents recognizing this institution should have the correct terminology. Additionally, there was no opposition testimony at the committee hearing. The bill was advanced unanimously out of judiciary 8-0. There was no fiscal note on this bill. I would just like to reiterate how proud I am. No fiscal note, everybody. That's, pretty impressive. Wouldn't have gotten this far if it had a fiscal note. The governor's proposed administrative solution does not go as far as I would like to see happening in creating clarity. However, I am thrilled that the governor has been spurred to action by my piece of legislation. It shouldn't have taken a piece of legislation to change these documents, to harmonize these documents, but it did. And I appreciate that the governor recognized that this was something that he needed to take action on. And I appreciate that the governor has now taken action on this. I look forward to seeing how this will be implemented in this state, and if concerns continue to arise out of his veto override, I will bring a bill next session to clean it up. I'm not going to make any of you vote on this today. I think it's important to recognize the process. This was a simple bill, really as simple as LB 111, and it went through the process cleanly. It went through the process the way it's supposed to go. It had a public hearing, it had testifiers, it had letters submitted. I have always, in every piece of legislation that I've had, been willing to work with people if they were in opposition to what my bill was trying to accomplish and try and find a solution. No one, not a single individual or advocacy group contacted me with issues on this bill. County officials contacted me in support of this bill. The people that do this work on the day-to-day supported this bill because it's an administrative function and they want their jobs to be cleaner and more concise and clarity in the law. So I'm not going to make anyone vote on this. I understand that might not sit well with some people out in the lobby, but I'm not going to do that because I believe that I've accomplished something here in this body. I just caution everyone in this body to take a close look at what happened to my bill, because this could happen to anyone here, that you have a bill that goes through the legislative process. You have a bill that gets out of committee 8-0, no one abstaining, everyone voted for it out of committee. You have a bill that goes through 3 rounds of votes on this floor, and you vote as a body to send it out to be signed into law, and the governor vetoes it without ever speaking to you about it. That is a problem. That is a huge, huge problem. And every single person in this body should be put on notice by what happened to me. Everyone should. We didn't have to spend the time that we spent on my bill. If the governor would have come to me and told me that he wanted to make these changes, we wouldn't have had to spend that time. So, I know we all want to get started with our summer. I know I want to go see my kids and go swimming and have fun and not think about this place for a few days before we start working on our interim studies. I would just like to take one moment to thank a few people, my wonderful staff who worked very hard this session to make this state a better place and has so much heart. Thank you. I'm sorry that we got this passed and that the governor vetoed it, but we'll do more good work next session for the state of Nebraska. I'd like to thank the Pages for their hard work. This has been a very hard session for the Pages. We all lost somebody very dear to us, and I think it's important to note that you all carry yourselves so gracefully and do the hard work that nobody else acknowledges. Not the body, but people outside of the body don't know how hard you all work. So thank you, Pages. And I know that the 48 colleagues I have here, thank you, would agree with me that you all are the backbone of this establishment. So, and of course, all of the staff that work in this building every day that go unnamed, thank you so much for your hard work. And thank you, colleagues, for this first year. This has been a great learning experience. It's been hard, heartbreaking, and wonderful. And I value it so much. So with that, Mr. President, I withdraw my motion.
Motion's withdrawn. Before proceeding, Senator Wayne announces 2 additional guests visiting today. We have with us 2 cousins of the senators, Soraya Wayne of Omaha and Arian Parker of Omaha. Could those 2 guests under the north balcony please rise so we can welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature? Speaker Scheer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, as we go into the next item for the resolutions, we will handle them with one vote. Each one of you will introduce your resolution. But I might add that these are resolutions and they should be able to be introduced in a fairly timely fashion. You don't have to read the resolution. A synopsis will do, and we'll be able to move forward perhaps a little quicker fashion that way. So the presiding officer will call on each of you to introduce your resolution, and then at the end we will have one vote to confirm those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, there are 17 resolutions. We'll take them each in turn, but there'll be one vote and an opportunity to debate them and question them after we've heard from the 17 introducers. First resolution, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, LR 147 by Senator Ben Hansen.
Senator Ben Hansen, you recognize. He waives the opportunity. Mr. Clerk, next resolution.
Senator Kavanaugh, LR 263.
Senator Kavanaugh, 263.
Thank you. LR 263 is acknowledging that Creighton Prep High School mock trial team won the state championship and finished second in the national championship. So congratulations to the young men at Creighton Prep High School for an excellent job.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Next resolution, Mr. Clerk.
264, Senator Friesen.
Senator Friesen.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just a congratulatory note to the Class D champion girls track team from Giltner. This was their 5th consecutive win, and I think that's unprecedented. I appreciate your vote on LR 264. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Mr. Clerk?
265 is offered by Senator Dorn.
Senator Dorn, you recognized.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. This is just a resolution honoring most of the sports teams, or quite a few of the sports teams, for their accomplishments at Southwest High School here in Lincoln. Their girls golf team, girls softball team, the girls swimming team, the girls track and field team, which won the Class A team title at the state track meet. In addition, some of the other athletes that had good years at a really good year at Southwest High School here in Lincoln. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Dorn. LR 266, Mr. Clerk?
266, Senator Gregor.
Senator Gregor,
Thank you, Mr. President. This is to congratulate West Holt Public School boys golf team for winning the 2019 Class D boys golf championship. This is West Holt's third boys golf championship in a row, proving they have an exceptional golf program. Coaches and students, congratulations on such a successful season, and I wish you the best of luck next year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Gregor. Mr. Clerk?
268, Senator Bowles. I'm sorry, I misspoke, Mr. President. Senator DeBoer, excuse me, Senator. 267, Senator DeBoer.
Senator DeBoer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like, this is a congratulatory LR to congratulate Bennington High School, who are the 2019 Class B state champions in baseball. So congratulations to them.
Thanks, Senator DeBoer. Ms. Clerk?
268 by Senator Bowles.
Senator Bowles? We'll pass over 268. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Well, 269 by Senator Bowles, Mr. President. So Senator Geist offers 270.
Senator Geist.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to introduce LR 270 to congratulate the Lincoln East High School girls and boys tennis teams for competing in the state championships. An extra congratulations to Bianca Rademacher, who won the #1 singles event, and Brooke Saylor, who won the #2 singles event in the Class A Girls State Championship. I would also like to congratulate Richard Baitlin for winning #2 singles event in the NSAA Class A Boys State Championship Tournament. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Geist. Mr. Clerk.
271 by Senator Geist.
Senator Geist.
And this is also to congratulate the Lincoln East High Girls Cross Country Team for winning the 2018 Girls Class A State Cross Country Championship. Congratulations.
Thanks, Senator Geist. Mr. Clerk.
272 is by Senator Pansy Brooks.
Senator Pansy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Good morning, colleagues. LR 272 is a congratulatory resolution honoring a group that has helped to build Nebraska. The Nebraska chapter of the American Institute of Architects is celebrating their 100th anniversary of their founding in our state. Please join me in voting green to help congratulate this great organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pansy Brooks. Mr. Clerk.
273, Senator Arch.
Senator Arch.
Legislative Resolution 273 is simply to identify June of 2019 as Scoliosis Month, Awareness Month, and we have approximately 50,000 Nebraskans that suffer from scoliosis, and it is an attempt to raise awareness to that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Arch. Mr. Clerk.
274 is by Senator McDonald.
Senator McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. President. National Association of Letter Carriers, thanking them for continuing their Stamp Out Hunger program. Nationwide, this year they collected 70 million pounds of food, and in the state of Nebraska, over 500,000 pounds of food was collected for people in need. Thank you to the National Association of Letter Carriers.
Thanks, Senator McDonald. Mr. Clerk.
275, Senator Geist.
Senator Geist.
Yes, and I'm pleased to congratulate Lincoln East High School students Chance Fry for winning the 152-pound division title by major decision, and Max Mayfield for winning the 138-pound division title at the 2019 State Class A Wrestling Championship. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Geist. Mr. Clerk.
276, Senator Geist.
Senator Geist.
And again, I'd like to congratulate Lincoln East High School students Jenna Mama for winning the 1,600-meter run, and Tyler Brown for winning the discus event at the NSAA Class A State Track and Field Championship. Congratulations.
Thanks, Senator Geis. Mr. Clerk?
277 is by Senator Lathrop.
Senator Lathrop.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. 277 is a resolution to congratulate Ralston Middle School and the high school students for their participation in and achievements with National History Day competition. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Lathrop. Mr. Clerk?
278 by Senator Hunt.
Senator Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. LR 278 is a legislative resolution to declare June 7th as National Gun Violence Awareness Day and encourage all Nebraskans to support their community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and honor the people who have been lost to gun violence. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Hunt. Mr. Clerk? Senator Bowles, we're going to go back to LR 268 and 269, if you care to speak to both of those, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. LR 268 congratulates the Lincoln High School girls tennis team on winning the 2019 Class A state championship, and LR 269 congratulates Skylar Peterson for his win at the 2019 Class A state track and field championship. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Bowles. Is there any discussion or questions on any of the LRs? I see none. Members, the question, Speaker Scheer, you're recognized.
Excuse me, Mr. President, but I do know Senator Chambers did want to speak on this item, so if you could wait for just a moment, please.
Senator Chambers, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, I know everybody's in a hurry to get out of here, but I'm a state senator for the full time that we are in session, and we're in session. I regret that the governor vetoed both of those bills. I regret that Senator Kavanaugh withdrew her motion to override. I'm not going to hash through all that, but let me tell you all something. I perform weddings. I performed the only same-sex marriage in this state out in that rotunda. All the weddings except one that I was asked to preside over were marriages between white people, and I performed more than a dozen. I had one that was very unique because it was interracial, it was intercontinental, and it was international. Europe, I think, is a continent. America is a part of a continent, so that made it intercontinental. The male was French, the female was American, as much as a black person is allowed to be that. He was white, she was black. So it was interracial, international, intercontinental, and I was requested to perform it in Nebraska, Omaha, because they were aware that I perform weddings. I presided over a wedding, a marriage, in a Catholic church. I did. It was in my community. One of the participants was from Nebraska, the other was from New York. They said there was nobody who could perform their wedding except me. The priest was aware that when it comes to the what I call abracadabra part, that if it was going to be in a Catholic church and the participants were Catholic, then a Catholic priest had to say abracadabra. So everybody agreed to that. I said everything up to that point, and I had comments to say after the abracadabra. And it was something that had never happened in that Catholic church before. You all may have contempt for me and what I stand for, but there are some people who, when it comes to the most important thing in their life, they say that I am the only one that they would want to have that done. There have been employees of the legislature for whom I performed that service. I was pleased and I was gratified because something means to me when it involves somebody else what it means to the person who is trying to involve me. Maybe I don't care anything about it, but when somebody offers to you that which is the best that they have to offer, that's the way I judge the value that I'll place on it. So when a man who is one of the biggest hypocrites that I have seen, the governor, talk about what the majority of people in Nebraska feel about something, and therefore he's doing something, he's lying. That letter he wrote was a lie. But I cannot control what other people will do. There are 3 branches of government at the state level, as is the case at the national level. Did you say a minute, Mr. President?
I did.
I'm going to stop, and then when I'm recognized, I can finish it all up on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Chambers. You are recognized.
Members of the legislature, I don't expect what I say to have any impact on any of you all, but to not say it would have an impact on me. I act and move in accord with my conscience, not what anybody else thinks, not what anybody else says, not what anybody says would be appropriate and suitable to the occasion. I'm not interested in badges, titles, symbols, emblems, none of that. I'm interested in people. When your president came back from his first encounter with Kim Jong-un, whom I've said from the beginning is much more intelligent than your president, one of the things he said, and I haven't heard a white person or anybody mention it, I pay attention to what these crazy people say. You don't let children play with matches. You don't want a crazy person to have control of a gun. The president is all of those things, a child and crazy. You all didn't pay attention when he said, I watched all of those thousands of people in North Korea. And when Kim spoke, they all sat up and took notice. That's what I want. He said that. That's what I want. And I pay attention to what crazy people say. And he's trying to get that now. The first thing he wanted to do along that line was to have a massive military parade in Washington, D.C. Y'all forgot that too, didn't you? He wanted a massive military parade using active duty troops, pulling them out of service. It could have cost hundreds of thousands or millions when you think about all of the money involved in doing that. But it didn't occur. Now, he is exercising the prerogatives of a dictator. I have said on this floor that your Constitution it's the perfect blueprint for a person who wants to be a dictator and establish a constitutional dictatorship. He's going to hurt farmers even more by threatening a $5 tariff, 5% tariff on anything coming from Mexico. Well, there are some things that Mexico and United States business people cooperate on, so some of the work is done in America. Well, when it leaves America, there's no tariff, but it's worked on in Mexico, and when it comes back, there's a tariff. Then when work is done in America and it goes back, then there's an additional tariff, and it's going to hit American people in this country. He's not an economist. He is a crazy man. If anybody behaved like him, what would you white people have said in view of how much angst you feel when I say that flag is a rag and tell you why? If a black president on Memorial Day, when you're supposedly honoring the flag, and those who you all say died for that flag. That's not why people in combat fight. They fight to save their bacon. That's why you do what you do. You're not thinking about the flag, the First Amendment, the 10th Amendment, or any of that. That is BS, usually said by people who've never been in the military or in combat. So that is fake. But if this black president had gone to Japan, a former enemy of the United States, to play golf, while those who fell for this country were being honored in this country, but because you had an overweight, racist, crazy man who has that most important ingredient, not anybody said anything except me. He's white. So everything he does is all right. Why do you get mad when I say it's a rag? Did I do anything that hurt anybody? Did I do anything that demeaned anybody? I expressed my opinion.
That's time, Senator. Senator Chambers, you recognize your third opportunity.
I expressed my opinion as I'm doing now. Isn't that what the Constitution is about? Ernie, you have constitutional rights in this country until you exercise them. You have the right to free speech until you use free speech. Well, nobody's going to silence me, and what I'm saying needs to be said, not just for today. You all are through, you'll go home, but I continue to think about these things, and I'll be coming down here every day, practically, when we're out of session, because the work that I do goes on. My preparation goes on. And that's why I get so irritated at the way some of you all behave here and what you choose to get indignant about, selective indignation. I watched things happen on this floor when President Obama was president. What would you white people have said if when that inveterate liar spoke, and let's say he spoke to a joint session of Congress, and a black member of the House said, "You liar," what would white people have done? They would have been outraged. When I don't use that kind of language. While President Obama was speaking, some white racist hollered, "You lie," on the floor of the House. And you white people have nothing to say about it. And I'm supposed to come here among you white people and not speak? You must be crazy, or you think that I am. This session for me will end as it started. Me being me and you being you. You're not going to practice what you're supposed to as somebody who took an oath. See, you swear to God. I don't take an oath, I make an affirmation. I don't need a God. I don't need the promise of heaven or the threat of hell to do anything. And neither of those would lead me to do anything I chose not to do. What governs me is what I know is right for me to do. And that's why I was distressed that we did not have an opportunity to override or attempt to override the governor's veto. It was contemptible on his part. I find him contemptible, and he is a racist, and I can demonstrate it by the way he has dealt with me and hasn't dealt with you all the same way. So be what you want to be. Think what you want to think. Do the petty things you want to do. But I'm going to be bigger than all of you. And maybe next year, which is my last one, I will bring this session down, as I've said that I can do. So you all get together and have your rules committee. Put something together to stop me. And let's see who wins. I told you, the speaker sets the agenda, I set the pace. That's not an empty threat. It's tried It's an attempt to make you all think, recognize what it means to be a member of this legislature, the power for good that we have. If we did exercise that power to help the people who need what it is we have the power to provide them with, these preachers, instead of praying over you all, would be saying, Father, thank you for putting such a fine group of men and women together, because regardless of what they profess their religion to be or whether they even have any religion, their work collectively carries out your will. They take care of the widows, the orphans, they feed the hungry, they take care of those who are mentally challenged, and all of those for whom government exists to provide what they cannot provide for themselves. So, Father God, I'm not begging you for anything today. I'm just thanking you for giving me the opportunity to be among people who, through their conduct, carry out what you said they ought to do. And seldom will a minister be given the opportunity to offer a true prayer of thanks. And that's the way it would be. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers. Senator Ben Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Being a freshman senator, I just want to thank Senator Chambers for his vigor, for his words of thought. I actually do appreciate them. I do listen to them, but I just couldn't help myself by giving him the last word for the year. And so he talks about the flag being a rag, and what also rhymes with that is tag. And so I'm a little bit of an OCD person, and so the fact that he doesn't tuck his tag in back of his shirt, and so that just bothers me. So I want to congratulate him also for this whole time, the whole year. I've been watching this whole time. He has not itched that once. He has not tucked the tag in once. And so I want to congratulate Senator Chambers for being who he is, for leaving his tag out, so to speak. And I just want to have last word. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Senator Hunt.
I'm sorry you won't have the last word, Senator Hansen. And I didn't want to have the last word, but I've been sitting stewing, and we shouldn't have withdrawn that motion to override. You all should have had to vote on that. I had a motion prepared that one of the pages was holding to file if Senator Kavanaugh withdrew her motion, and I decided not to do that because I respect what the introducer of the bill wanted to do, and she asked me not to do that. But you all should have had to take that vote. That came out of committee with no opposition testimony. And then people who voted it out of the committee opposed it on the floor. What I got out of the governor's letter, his veto letter, was that Nebraska is legally obligated to tolerate same-sex couples, but we're going to make life as hard and as unwelcoming as possible for those people while they're here in this state, because that's what we believe in this state. Other examples, LGBTQ workplace discrimination, conversion therapy. What I got from that letter was that we are legally obligated to tolerate your marriage, but that's as far as we're going to take it. And if your boss wants to fire you because of you having that marriage, then we're not going to help you with that, because that's what we believe in this state. Or we will tolerate your future marriage, but we will torture you as a child to prevent you from entering that marriage in the first place, because that's what we believe in this state. That should have been an easy vote, and you all should have taken it. And I would not be able to live with myself over the interim if I didn't stand up and say that. I regret that we didn't do that. That's going to be a big regret of mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Pansy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I too regret not going forward on a vote, but I'm standing up on a couple other matters. First off, I want to thank our amazingly creative staff and the amazing people that worked last night to prepare a humorous and fun, fabulous show for us last night. I regret that some of you chose not to come. I think that you should rethink that decision. It was not insulting to people. And if we don't have an ability to go forward and laugh at ourselves, I think it's sort of sad. But I cannot tell you how creative and brilliant the people who worked on that show are. It is worth seeing, and if you get a chance, you should look at the video, because it was very funny. The laughter was cathartic, and I hope that next year, instead of deciding to go someplace else intentionally, that you will join us in a spirit of collegiality. That's number one. Number two, what have we all learned? I'm hoping that each of us will ask ourselves, what did we learn this session? Because I'm wondering, and it seems to me that one of the things that's coming out of this body is that it is the best thing to do to demand my way or the highway. But I want you to all think about that position that many of us have taken in this body and how it has led to nothing. That my way or the highway places us each in our corner. We're leaving 6 days early. We were unable to have any kind of major tax proposal. I do want to thank Senators Linehan, Senator Breezy, Senator Friesen for their efforts. But again, we couldn't even get the rural people to decide because, again, perfection is the enemy of good. Instead of working with progressives, working with all the various bodies and people who represent different constituencies, even among the rural people, everybody ran to their corner for the second year in a row and said, no, we can't do this. And I'll tell you what, if the rural people aren't happily aligned, then why in the world are the urban people expected to jump on board with that? So I would hope that instead of leaner and meaner, we become more kind and compassionate, that we will listen to each other more, that we will work together. I can give you a number of instances of bills that were dead in the water until people started working together on both sides. And I don't need to bring them up, but you all know them. And so I hope you use that as the example and the lesson for next year, and the lesson to learn that we can work for the people in Nebraska. There are all sorts of things that we don't agree with each other on, but can't we find the common ground and the common good for Nebraskans? We each represent about 38,000 people. So you may not like me, you may not like what I stand up and say, but I'm a vote for you. So if you could work with me and find a way to find some common ground, we can move forward. We may even get a really good property tax plan. So I hope that that's what people go home over the summer and take a deep breath and are prepared to work together, because we can do way more together.
1 minute.
This is not the effort is not due to a lack of willingness, but we must work together and compromise. And I hope that people just will move forward and catch that. And I'm going to take a minute more on something else.
Senator Pansy Brooks, you recognize.
Thank you. Finally, I want to celebrate something else that's going on, and we couldn't really get it onto these resolutions. I wanted to thank Dondi Plowman, who raised millions for the business school and has made that business school a beacon of hope and growth for our state in the Midwest. She came forward with a simple idea. Her slogan was "Start Something." It's a really good slogan for all of us, to start something. Work hard. You know, if you have to go at something piecemeal, that's what I've learned in juvenile justice. I haven't been able to do everything I wanted in juvenile justice during my years here, so I've gone at it a piece at a time. So again, rather than getting the whole package on property tax and what you want, piecemeal it. The $51 million out of the rainy day fund came forward, so that's something positive for the farmers in Nebraska. So anyway, I just want to say I'm grateful to Dondi Plowman. I'm going to miss her and her husband, Dennis Duchan. Then Hank Bounds, I want to thank him. During his tenure here, there has been growth in enrollment, expansion of research, especially medical research, and I am grateful for his leadership and success in helping our Nebraska university system thrive and grow. Now we have 2 additional leaders of excellence, Richard Moberly, who is the Dean of the Law School and is now interim executive vice chancellor. I know him personally. He is a man of substance, and I am grateful that he has agreed to take that role. And finally, I'm thrilled about the interim chancellor, Dr. Susan Fritz, being appointed. Senator Linehan and I worked with her quite a bit on dyslexia and reading issues, and this woman is competent, she's capable, and she will continue Nebraska's upward trend to leading our wonderful university. So I just wanted to say those positive words about some things that are going on. I'm grateful to work with each of you. I know we can do more. I hope that maybe this year some of the freshmen that came in learned that we aren't all so evil as some of the people said that we were. And you now have learned that you can work with us and that there is hope ahead. And I also want to thank a friend of all of ours who's leaving this year, which I just learned about today, Jim Daggett, the head of the Redcoats. And he's now working still for us and on the phone. But Jim has been an amazing friend to all of us. He has been, of course, hardworking, always there with a smile for us, always has something kind to say, no matter who we are, no matter the stands we take. And when I found out he was leaving, I got teary because he is a special man with the kindest heart, and we need to all celebrate this wonderful person in our body. Thank you.
Speaker Scheer.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we vote on this, there has been several of you that have questioned why we are introducing these and why we have to vote. Just to remind people, the resolutions during the year that were introduced, once they sat for 5 days, they became effective. We no longer have 5 days to let these set, so that's why they are introduced, and in order for them to be effective, we do have to pass them. So I would encourage your green vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Remember, the question for the body is the adoption of the 17 legislative resolutions that were previously presented to you. Those in favor of adopting those resolutions shall vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have you all voted care too? Record, please.
44 ayes, no nays on adoption of the resolutions.
The resolutions are adopted. While the legislature is in session and capable of transacting business, I propose to sign and do hereby sign the following LRs: 104, 257, 13, 147, 263, 264, 265, 266, 267, 268, 269, 270, 271, 272, 273, 274, 275, 276, 277, and 278. Items to the record, please.
Mr. President, bills read on final reading this morning were presented to the governor at 9:30 a.m. Resolutions 257, 104, and LR 13 were correctly enrolled. Transmittal communication regarding the transmittal of LB 492 with a certificate signed by the presiding officer with respect to the fact that the legislature passed that bill, notwithstanding the objections of the governor. And second, communication from the clerk to the secretary regarding the transmittal of LB 533. That's all that I have at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I hereby appoint the following 5 senators.
We need to vote on the motion, and you need to ask Bowles to make a motion.
Senator Bowles, you recognized for motion.
A committee of 5 be appointed to notify the governor that the 106th legislature first session of the Nebraska legislature is about to complete its work and to return with any message the governor may have for the legislature.
Thanks, Senator Bowles. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is adopted. I hereby appoint the following 5 senators to advise the governor that the legislature is about to complete its work and to escort the governor from his office to the chamber. Senator Hilgers, Senator Crawford, Senator McDonald, Senator Slama, and Senator Clements. Would those 5 senators please retire to the rear of the chamber and then proceed to the governor's office? Sergeant at Arms. Chair recognizes Sergeant at Arms.
Mr. President, your committee now escorting the governor of the great state of Nebraska, Governor Pete Ricketts.
Members of the 106th Legislature, I present to you the Governor of the great state of Nebraska, Governor Pete Ricketts.
Good morning. Good morning. Will everybody please sit down? President Foley, Speaker Scheer, members of the legislature, it's an honor for me to be here in the chamber at the closing of the first session of the 106th Nebraska Legislature. Just 5 months ago, I stood before you to outline the priorities to grow Nebraska and put Nebraskans first. At that time, it would have been hard to imagine that within a few weeks, we would experience the most widespread, unprecedented natural disaster in our state's history. What started out as a blizzard in the Panhandle that made an already very difficult winter even harder for our cattle producers, then turned into 2 to 3 inches of rain on top of snowpack and frozen ground. All that water ran off into our river systems and created record crestings on the Niobrara, the Platte, the Loup, the Elkhorn, and the Missouri rivers. But what we saw was equally unprecedented, as countless selfless Nebraskans stepped up to put their communities ahead of their own individual needs. Whether it was our firefighters, our EMTs, police or sheriff departments, National Guard, State Patrol, or just the volunteers who showed up. For example, in Lynch, both the fire chief and the Boyd County Sheriff's homes were flooded out, but they stayed on their jobs, keeping people safe. In Fremont, hundreds of people showed up to sandbag to help protect the city against rising waters. In our churches, volunteers helped feed, clothe, shelter, clean out homes, and in general, get their neighbors back on their feet. We saw hay donations from across the country pour into our state to help livestock producers. And we saw organizations such as the Nebraska Broadcasters establish relief drives to help the victims of this natural disaster. All of this give meaning to those words, Nebraska strong. And I know that because of the efforts of people all across the state, we will rebuild bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. It's kind of an applause line, folks. You can clap for that one. That's a good one, right? Like, we're going to rebuild, right? And you all have done your part. You all have appropriated $11 million for the governor's disaster fund to help recover from this disaster and future disasters. You've passed property tax relief for the victims of disasters. And you've worked in your communities to connect people with resources so they can help recover. I've seen it. I've toured many of your districts with you to be able to help people recover. And I know that when you go home, you will continue to work to help the people of your district recover. Thank you for your efforts. And now what this all demonstrates is the power in us working together as Nebraskans to get things done. And we've seen that here in this building as well. Reflect for a moment that the budget we are about to wrap up in about a month represents your work, where across 15 months you all passed 3 budgets, again, unprecedented, when our revenues were not meeting forecasts. You all passed budgets that helped us live within our means, just like every Nebraska family has to do. You funded important priorities for our state, and you did it all without raising taxes. Congratulations. Working together, We also passed important priorities like the Rural Workforce Housing Fund that has initiated housing projects in places like Wakefield, Fremont, and Hastings, addressing a critical need in our small towns and rural communities. And in this legislative session, you all have passed bills that have helped make state government more effective and more efficient by merging state agencies. Passed pro-life legislation. Updated our education system for Americanism. Got rid of unnecessary occupational licensing barriers and made our state more military and veteran friendly. And on my top priority, property tax relief, we have continued to make good progress. You all have increased the property tax credit relief fund by $51 million. That's a 23% increase. That's $275 million in a year, $550 million across the biennium. I know that property tax is a top priority for many of you as well because of this work. Now, there are some in the media who want to minimize your efforts. But let's keep this in mind and put it in perspective. In the 6 years before we started working together on budgets, the property tax credit relief fund had grown 20%. You all grew it more than that just 1 year. And in the 5 years that we have been working together on budgets, we have nearly doubled that fund. That is significant progress. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have more work left to do. We do. We have to address long-term structural needs with regard to property taxes. But we need to continue to make progress on this important issue for the people of Nebraska. Now, when we have worked together to create the environment for our families to be successful, we have seen that we're getting recognized. For the 3rd year in a row now, I can stand here and tell you that Nebraska has won the Governor's Cup from Site Selection Magazine for the most economic development projects per capita of any state in the country. And what that represents is companies investing in our state and creating jobs for our Nebraska families so they can send their kids to school, go on that family vacation, and enjoy the good life here in our state. For 4 years now, we have maintained over 1 million non-farm jobs. We have the #1 most fiscally stable state in the country. We have the 2nd best regulatory environment. And we are the 2nd lowest cost state for doing business. And since 2014, we have had the 3rd highest wage growth of any state in the country. Folks, this is what it means to grow Nebraska, to be able to create those opportunities for our working families here in the state, to give those Nebraska families those opportunities. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on how we can create those opportunities for our Nebraska families. Now, before I conclude, I want to recognize that we're coming up on an important anniversary. In just a few days, we'll have the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasions. Those invasions that led the Allied armies to Europe to help free the populations there from Nazi tyranny. On that day, almost 75 years ago, 2,500 Americans lost their lives, and more would lose their lives in the days that followed in helping free that continent. It was the largest invasion fleet that had ever been assembled. The weather wasn't great. It was windy. It was choppy. But even more Americans may have lost their life if it wasn't for a native Nebraskan. You see, Andrew Jackson Higgins invented the Higgins boat, which was the craft those soldiers used to land on that beach. And that saved countless lives. In fact, President Eisenhower credited Higgins with winning the war with that invention. And it's been the sacrifice of men and women not only in that greatest generation in World War II, but throughout our history, that have put on that uniform, been willing to place themselves between harm's way and our freedoms to keep us safe and provide for our liberties. It's important to note, however, that the greatness of a nation is not measured by the wars that are won, but by the peace and prosperity that those victories bring to the people. Our freedoms would not be secure if it wasn't for the sacrifices the men and women in the military make for us. But it is up to us to take advantage of that opportunity to be able to create that peace and prosperity for our Nebraska families. And that is what I look forward to continuing to work with you on. Thank you for working on the people's business here in this chamber. You also sacrifice time away from your families and your friends. I appreciate all that you do for the people of Nebraska. God bless you in your work, and God bless the great state of Nebraska.
Thank you, Governor Ricketts. Would the escort committee please assist the governor as he departs the chamber? Members, please come to order. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Speaker Scheer, would move to suspend Rule 6, Sections 3, 5, and Rule 7, Sections 3 and 7, so as to indefinitely postpone the following bills whose provisions have been included in other enacted legislation or whose companion bill has been indefinitely postponed. Legislative Bills 13, 88, 98, 101, 172, 178, 191, 239, 246, 280, 330, 332, 342, 360, 385, 434, 452, 479, 522, 544, 547, 566, 574, 579, 584, 608, 618, 626, 642, 642A, 694, 733, 733A, and 737.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Speaker Scheer, you recognize to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I introduce this motion to suspend the rules to allow the legislature to indefinitely postpone all the bills sitting on the general file that have been amended into another bill. This action will allow the worksheet to accurately reflect at the end of the session the bills which were eligible for rescheduling on the agenda in the future. The bills which are listed in this motion, I would just skip over during the agenda setting next year. By indefinitely postponing these bills, members of the legislature and the public will have a more accurate record of the bills that were eligible to be debated next year. Some of you have questioned the listing. These bills that are listed are only those that were attached to a bill that were on general file. there may be bills in committee that were attached to parts of legislation, but the only ones that we are worried about at this point in time are those that were sitting on general file and have been attached to another piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is there any discussion on the motion? I see none. Speaker Sherry, recognize to close. Your way is closed. The request for the body is the adoption of the motion set forth by Speaker Scheer. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
40 ayes, 1 nay on the motion to indefinitely postpone those bills.
The motion is adopted. Speaker Scheer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it's Friday. What's up for next week? I got nothing. But what I do, I want to speak a little bit about what we have accomplished. Mr. President, colleagues, the 106th Legislature first session is now complete. It was certainly an ambitious session, to say the least. We had 739 bills that were introduced, of which 294 were passed into law. Among those passed were many great innovations and ideas that truly will benefit the state of Nebraska, but we were also unfortunately left several issues on the table as well. For the third session in a row, we found ourselves coming into the year with budget uncertainties that would require careful prioritization of dollars. I'd like to commend the Appropriations Committee for their diligent work to craft a balanced budget that carefully and strategically sets the state's priorities for the next biennium. This budget provided $550 million of property tax relief through the Property Tax Credit Relief Fund. It appropriated over $2 billion to K-12 education. It sets aside funding to carry out the Medicaid expansion. It increases several provider reimbursement rates that have been held flat for many of the past years, as well as many other things. Outside of the budget, we had several pieces of legislation that will make a difference for the state and her citizens. Senator Williams brought LB 463 to curb the process by which an individual could lose their home by way of a tax sale. Senator Wade brought a package of bills designated to help spur development in the Omaha's urban core by adopting economic opportunity zones pursuant to federal law and encouraging development in extremely blighted communities. Senator Holloran brought LB 693 to crack down on the scam calls. Senator Friesen was able to get LB 18384 through, which paves the way for small cell investment and eventually 5G service here in Nebraska. Senator Hilgers brought LB 616, authorizing the Nebraska Department of Transportation to utilize a build finance payment method to accelerate Lincoln South Beltway. Senator Brewer, Lowe, and Blood, and others brought several bills to benefit our active duty and retired military constituents. Senator McDonald brought LB 445 to increase transparency in municipal spending. Senator Lathrop and the Judiciary Committee took significant steps with LB 686 to address our corrections problems. And finally, Senator Howard continued to push forward her years of work on the prescription drug monitoring program. We also showed Nebraskans that we can work well with Nebraska's other branches of government, despite our sometimes strong philosophical differences. 5 senators, Senator Wishart, Lindstrom, Linehan, LaGrone, and Wayne, worked with Treasurer Morante to expand and access to and strengthen our state's 529 college savings plan. Because of the multi-branch collaboration, Nebraska children will now have a 529 account open for each one of them at birth, with the money in it to help kickstart their own college savings plan. We were also able to work with the Secretary of State, Evans, to ensure that Nebraska can purchase new elections equipment prior to the 2020 election. The state's election technology has been severely aging for years, and this investment has been put on hold for the past several years, was long overdue. I wouldn't be honest if I tried to construe the entire session as a success, however. It certainly was not all blue skies. This body has been at loggerheads over our fair share of times, and we have some issues that we need to focus on in the interim so that we can return fresh and ready to work next January. There are 49 of us in this body. We have been elected because our unique backgrounds, experiences, and skills that we bring to the table. Each one of us had the trust of our constituents placed in us when we came down here to represent them to the best of our abilities. Yet this body, we are known as senators. None of us is held in a higher regard or more qualified than another, and all of us, our votes are worth the same. We are all here to do what we truly believe is in the best interest in the state of Nebraska. We will have philosophical differences at times. That's the great thing about this unicameral, and it's a sign of a hard-working unicameral. However, what is not healthy and should not take place in the legislative body is personal attacks and vilification. That is what creates distrust. Disagreement on ideas is healthy, but let's disagree, and let's not disagree disagreeably. A look at last week's debate was an example. The distrust created in this body won out again. There were numerous well-crafted property tax relief proposals that came up this year, none of which received support to pass. For years, agriculture interests have been pushing us for property tax relief, and we've not been able to deliver in a substantial victory. Likewise, however, the business community sees a need on the horizon to pass a new incentive program to replace the sunsetting Nebraska Advantage Act. They came to us this year with a similarly well-put-together proposal. These two sides are seen at times to be diametrically opposed with each other in their goals. As a result, instead of working together to ensure that both sides could achieve a victory, when one bill failed, the other quickly followed. In the end, we all walked away empty-handed again. To paraphrase Gary Oldman, this may not be the body we all wanted, but it's the body we got. If we aim to be successful as a body, we need to trust each other and to rely on everyone's unique expertise, experiences, and knowledge. When we realize that, we will truly be a great legislative body. I ask all of you to take a step back over the interim and get to know each other again better. Build real relationships with our colleagues that will hold up next session when those days get long and our better judgment is tested. And that will happen in a short session. We have shown that we can work together, but we still need to learn to trust one another. Let's all remember as we move forward not to let the perfect become the enemy of good. In my now 7 years here, I have never seen a perfect bill, although I have to tell you I've brought several that are pretty darn close. But we can achieve some really good success when and if we work together. We've shown that. We just need to continue and work harder at it. With that being said, I would also like to do my best to acknowledge some of those that have helped us. I'd be remiss not to thank a few individuals who keep this place running before we adjourn. First, Clerk Patrick O'Donnell. Dick Brown, the Assistant Clerk. And for the lack of a better term, Brandon Metzler, who is the Assistant to the Assistant Clerk. Carol, Diana, and Vicki, who sit up there and watch us every day, and I'm sure are amazed that we ever get anything done. The rest of the clerk's office, which includes the bill room, the transcribers, the unicameral information office, the legislative technology center, and, of course, the sergeant at arms, led by Jim Doggett, who is retiring after 7 years of service to this legislature, including the last 2 as Chief Sergeant at Arms. Thank you all very much for your service. And the pages, as well as Kitty Kearns, who we sadly lost this year, who is a tremendous loss to this body, this facility, and this chamber. I'd also like to thank the State Patrol for keeping us safe. The Fiscal Office, led by Tom Berquist. The Revisor's Office, led by Joanne Pepperell and Marcia Klug. The Legislative Accounting and Budget Office, led by Dan Nicolite. The Legislative Research Division, led by Nancy Sear. The Legislative Audit Division, led by Martha Carter. And the Ombudsman Office, led by Carl Eskridge. As well as our President and Presiding Officer, Lieutenant Governor Mike Foley. And certainly not least, and certainly not last, because there's one after this, but all of our staffs. I'm not sure about all the rest of you, but mine make me look awfully good, so I really appreciate them. And last, and now not least, would be a thank you to NAT for their gavel-to-gavel coverage that provides the information and our activities to the rest of the state. And colleagues, thank you for all your hard work, your dedication to this session. It will pay off. The citizens of Nebraska were well served, and they will be better off than when we started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to the agenda, we'll now move to the closing procedural motions. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, first of all, an announcement. The Executive Board will meet upon adjournment in room 1003. The Executive Board in 1003.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President.
Mr. Clerk. Senator Howard for motion.
I move that the legislature approve the preparation and printing of the permanent legislative journal, session laws, and indexes by Patrick J. O'Donnell, and that he be directed to send to each member of the legislature a copy of the permanent legislative journal and session laws.
Thank you, Senator Howard. Members, you've heard the motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion's adopted. Next. Senator Crawford for motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the journal for the 84th day, as prepared by the clerk of the legislature, be approved.
Thanks, Senator Crawford. Members, you heard the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion's adopted. Senator Kulowski for motion.
Mr. President, I move that the 106th Legislature, first session of the Nebraska Legislature, having finished all business before it, now at 11:40, adjourn, sine die.
Thank you, Senator Kulowski. Roll call vote's been requested. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Albright, voting yes. Sir Arch, voting yes. Sir Blood, Not voting, Sir Bowles. Voting yes, Sir Bostelman. Voting no, Sir Brandt. Voting yes, Sir Brewer. Voting no, Sir Breesy. Voting yes, Sir Kavanaugh. Voting yes, Sir Chambers. Senator Clements. Voting no, Sir Crawford. Voting yes, Sir DeBoer. Voting yes, Sir Dorn. Voting yes, Sir Erdman. Voting no, Sir Friesen. Voting yes, thank you, Senator. Senator Geist. Voting yes, Sir Gregor. Voting yes, Sir Groney. Sir Holleran. Voting no, Sir Ben Hansen. Voting yes, Sir Matt Hansen. Voting yes, Sir Hilders. Voting yes, Sir Hickelman. Voting yes, Sir Howard. Voting yes, Sir Hughes. Voting yes, Sir Hunt. Voting yes, Sir Kalowski. Voting yes, Sir Coulterman. Voting yes, Sir Legrone. Voting yes, Sir Lathrop. Voting yes, Sir Lindstrom. Voting yes, Sir Linehan. Voting yes, Sir Lowe. Voting no, Sir McAllister. Voting yes, Sir McDonald. Voting yes, Sir Morfeld. Voting yes, Sir Moser. Voting yes, Sir Merman. Voting no, Sir Pansing Brooks. Voting yes, Sir Quick. Voting yes, Sir Shear. Voting yes, Sir Slama. Voting yes, Sir Stinner. Voting yes, Sir Vargas. Voting yes, Sir Walls. Voting no, Sir Wayne. Voting no, Sir Williams. Voting yes, Sir Wishart. Voting yes. 37 ayes, 9 nays.
Motion's adopted. We are adjourned. Sine die.